Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of ASKability. ASKability is a series of short video interviews where I talk with other disabled people about how inclusion, accommodations, and accessibility show up in our lives. I'm Nico Meyering. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man with parted blonde hair, blue and brown spectacles. I'm wearing a green flannel shirt. I am seated against a light green wall basement background. In transparency, I am indeed in a basement. I'm honored today to be joined by my friend Nidhi. Nidhi, will you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Nico, for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Nidhi, Nidhi Jaisoor. I am, for a visual description, I am a South Asian woman with shoulder-length black hair that's parted in the middle. I'm wearing round dark brown rimmed glasses. I am sitting in my bedroom office, which is kind of blurred in the background because there's a printer and a shelf and really nothing much interesting. So I bring the background. I am I'm a writer, I'm a mom. I do partnerships at Diversibility. I am proudly disabled. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And for me, it was kind of, it is of course a condition that, that I'm born with, but it kind of manifested later in life after an accident where the pain from whiplash just never went away, and it actually got worse and limited functionality. And that's when I was diagnosed. A few years later is when I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that was thought to contribute to the pain. I also have some mild scoliosis, and yeah, it's the pain is kind of like my constant companion, but I've learned to manage it. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Nidhi. I'm intrigued by what you say about pain being a constant. Would pain be part of your baseline, would you say?
Yeah, there is a baseline amount of pain, a little amount of pain, and then it kind of it fluctuates and it varies based on my activities and my function and the environment, both physical as well as like, emotional stress levels, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So yeah, and it kind of falls into a bucket called chronic pain, which kind of also comes under like the chronic illness umbrella. But I think of my condition as kind of a dynamic disability in a way, where the level of disability or the level of functionality kind of varies from day to day. So it's not a constant. And I think that is something that has been that was initially confusing for me, because there were days when I was high functioning, quote unquote high functioning, able to do more in a day, and there would be some other days when I'd be like just you know bedridden. And I don't want to say bedridden, but just choosing to kind of spend more time just resting. And yeah, so it's been kind of ups and downs. And I'll talk about how accessibility in a broader sense kind of has enabled me to remove those ups and downs and kind of maintain my kind of functionality and maintain those those lower pain levels. Because I think that's really important, and that's something that I did not kind of understand myself until a few years later in my journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's an excellent summary. I learned a lot, at least. It does feed into my first planned question. What access features or tools do you use in daily life, and how do they help you?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So I want to preface that question with an answer in that I used to think of accessibility as a binary, and I used to think of disability as a binary. It's like there's an all or nothing. And accessibility is a binary to where it removes a barrier, a yes or no barrier. And thinking about, say, someone who's a wheelchair user wanting to enter a building and there's no ramp, there are only steps. Now that is an access issue, and that's a barrier because that means that person cannot even enter the building. And then as I started to learn more about disability and speak more with the community. And my thought was that, disability is a range and a range in spectrum. And what I mean by that is it just comes in so many forms. It's so diverse, right? And in response, accessibility also can be a range. So I'll give you an example. So for my this neck and back pain, what suits me the most is a high back chair. I'm sitting on one right now, but I don't think you can see it, where, there's a headrest, it's supported till the shoulders, and that's where I'm most comfortable. That's more I can sustain myself for a longer period without having to, get up and walk around or stretch or even lie down. If I were to sit on a bench, I mean, I can sit on a bench. There's no barrier between me and the bench. I can't sit on it. I just won't last as long. 10 minutes and I'll be like, okay, I'll need to get up, and then sitting on the bench, say for an hour, that's going to affect me later on in the day, because I'm going to have a little reduced functionality because a little more pain, and I'll have to modify my activities following that episode. If it's a place where, say, I go to a restaurant and they have only benches, so then that's kind of a problem. I mean, I can still manage, but is it going to be a full experience? No, not really. Say they have chairs with lower backrests. That's great. Not ideal, but still better. Do they have chairs that, with higher backrests? I mean, that's awesome. That would be great. So in that sense, I feel like sometimes accessibility can be like a range. So it's, at least for someone with my kind of condition, where it's more of, management of function and pain, I feel like accessibility can be a range. There was a point I was going to make and I forgot, but anyway, I think it'll come back. But
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to also mention, actually, it was Emily Ladau's book, Demystifying Disability, that kind of helped me reframe accessibility, because in her book, and I'm paraphrasing, but she says something to the effect of, accessibility is anything that helps make an experience more equitable and that allows everyone to fully use a product or participate in an experience without barriers, and participate to the same extent as a non-disabled person would. And that was key for my understanding. And honestly, that thought and that validation, I think that's what kind of enabled me to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to make things a little more accessible for myself, and I'm going to get myself a chair with a headrest, because that's what helps me do my job better. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about accessibility. And then I have a list of things I use.
Sure. If you would like to talk about those access tools, please do. I just want to add that I loved your answer. I am so glad you gave examples of access as a range, because it's not something that anybody else has talked with me about before. Thank you for helping me learn.
Oh, you're welcome. And I mean, this is, of course, this is my thoughts about it. I don't know if it's, how accurate it is, how correct it is.
Sure.
Even if we should be striving to think of accessibility as a range, but that's how I've kind of thought about it in my experience.
Okay.
So for other examples, things I use are, so yeah, I'll use a high back chair whenever I can. I'll use a firm mattress because that helps me. Let's see, okay, so virtual and remote kind of conferences, appointments, that has been great, because that has actually allowed me to, I had my first writing residency this year, and I would not have applied for it if it was going to be in person, because, I'd had to fly out to a place where, I mean, sure, I could have made it accessible, maybe, just making sure, the bed was firm enough, but I just know that having it virtual, even though it may not be the same experience, it allowed me to more readily kind of participate. So, and even doctor's appointments, that being virtual, that means I don't have to, drive and, go to an office, and then, I'm spending my spoons, and I'll talk about spoon theory in a bit. I use things like I use a food processor for, chopping vegetables, or I use a really sharp knife. And I know this kind of sounds very like mundane, but all these things kind of add up and it helps me. I always have supportive shoes, and even at home I always wear Crocs because that kind of helps kind of reduce the impact of walking on a hard wooden floor. Um, I do use a neck pillow while driving, and if I'm not driving, I use a neck collar. That just kind of helps keep my neck a little more stable and kind of protect against those bumps in the
Sure.
road. I will use a cane, like a walking sort of support stick, if I'm at an event where I have to stand a lot. Because again, after some time, I begin to kind of tired, I feel a twinge in my back. So just having that support, that kind of helps me last a little longer. Um, and when I used to, pre-pandemic, when I used to go out more often, I used to actually just take a little pillow with me, in case I needed to kind of give my back a little more support. Um, I do have a accessible parking placard, the blue one, and I will use accessible parking at school drop-offs and pickups. Because when my son, he's going to be 4 now, but when he was younger, especially, he would just like run off into the parking lot, and I was not able to run after him. And if I had to carry him, just having my car close by was definitely helpful. Um, I will also sometimes, so I've had a few concussions recently, and that there is a connection between more concussions and having EDS, but there's no causation. But anyways, so with that, sometimes it's been hard to read, like to scroll and read. So that kind of, there's been some eye movement trouble. So for that, I use this a tool called Speechify, and that will convert your website into like, audio, and which is audio, which is kind of nice to listen to because you can like, you can pick like different accents, and everything has a persona. It's pretty cool. Um, and just small little things like having a bag which has a wider shoulder strap, using a backpack where possible, using a rolling bag where possible, like on the very few occasions that I need, go to the gym to use the swimming pool for my aqua therapy, I'll use a rolling bag. And honestly, my biggest access kind of tool as a parent is my spouse, because he's the one who does the heavy lifting when needed, and the running after my child if we're in a park and I need to keep him safe. So I'm sure this is the first time someone has said that a person is their access, but it's true. He is my kind of support.
I mean, it is the first time this has happened, but it also totally makes sense. Children are fast and tough to catch.
Oh
It's
yeah,
important to have someone else there.
yeah, he's super fast.
Valid. Thank you so much. Tell me, what access features or tools would make the biggest improvements in your life, but you don't use them right now?
Okay, so I think, and this is going to sound bizarre, but just smoother roads, honestly, because I can't tell you how, I mean, this is for my neck. I think, bumpy roads and bumps in the road, and even actually just driving to some extent is one of the biggest kind of aggravating factors. And especially when there are potholes in the road, or it's just not paved evenly, I feel it in my neck. And maybe I just need to get a better car. I don't know, but yeah, smooth roads would be great. And it's like that curb cut effect, right? I mean, it would benefit everyone. It would be a pleasure to drive on them, and it would really kind of help folks, with back issues, with joint issues. Because I've spoken to other folks in my community, and I've been like, wait a minute, is this just me? Because it feels very bizarre. Like, no, I feel it too. So yeah, that would be really awesome. And what else would be really awesome is just having higher back chairs kind of as a standard, and especially in theaters. I know movie theaters, I mean, it's all high back, but I'm talking about, the classical theaters where you go to watch a play or a or the ballet or something. So I think if that can be the norm, that would be so awesome. And again, that would just make things just more comfortable for everyone. I think another feature, or I don't know if it's a feature, but just an action that would really help everyone is trigger warnings. I know now there are trigger warnings on a lot of social media posts, and that's really awesome. And I think trigger warnings, I had a conversation with someone about why we need, like how we need to have trigger warnings in books. Because, like sometimes you'll be reading a book and it's really beautiful and then it gets really dark. And then, so I'm like, okay, we need to have some trigger warnings in books, maybe movies, even trigger warnings before, there's like, if there's a flashy video coming your way on Instagram. I know some folks do it. They'll say, trigger warning, lights flashing, but especially when I was in the thick of my concussion, I think, oh gosh, yeah, that would have been really, really helpful just to have that. And yeah, just more kindness, for anyone who's having either some PTSD or anxiety or any mental health issues, which I definitely I was in the thick of it, a few years ago when I had this undiagnosed pain and I wasn't managing my pain well. And I can tell you from that I think a little kindness goes a long way. And I almost feel like that can almost be a barrier for folks, with mental health conditions.
I can tell you put a lot of thought into this. That was really fantastic. I've never thought about empathy or lack thereof as a gateway to access or conversely as a barrier. But it's a very useful way of thinking about it, actually. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I would also hear you about the bad roads. I've lived in like 4 US states now, and the poor roads are a fairly ubiquitous feature. It's tough. And the poor sidewalks here in Philadelphia are tough for folks here who use wheelchairs. Like there's 16 to 19% Philadelphians who are disabled. So it's
Okay.
not an insignificant number.
Yeah.
Valid.
Yeah.
I see you in that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I just to also kind of restate that, not that it's a barrier as such, but it's more of, when you think of accessibility again as a range,
Mhm.
it just enables folks to, to participate more, to be more fully present and just have a nice, equitable experience.
I respect those words. How are disabled people included or excluded in your community? And are there people or groups that are advocating for greater inclusion?
I know we spoke about what community was. That was like one of the first questions I
Yes.
asked. And I feel like I'm at the cusp of a few communities. So I think if I have to pick one, I would say folks with dynamic disabilities. Where the disability kind of changes from day to day, or the access needs change from day to day. I think previously there might have been some exclusion because of, just the way it presents. One day you see a person, they're fine, they're walking without anything. And then, a few days later, maybe the same person is walking with a cane. And so I could see how it might be confusing, but I think now there's more awareness about chronic illness and dynamic disability and how, and spoon theory, where, spoon theory is like this theory where it's actually a way of looking at, the limited functionality and the limited energy or capacity of someone with either a chronic illness or a disability, to where you kind of have to space out your your activities just to kind of preserve that function and that energy. So I think for me personally, Instagram was huge because that's where I kind of connected with other folks in, the non-apparent disability community and the chronic illness community, and I saw that, okay, this has not just been my experience. There are other people with this experience. So I think awareness is how we've been kind of, where at least I felt more included. So I think that's been key. And in terms of groups, let's see. I think I diversibility is one where there's that connection, there's support, there's awareness. I know there are a few other accounts on Instagram that talk about chronic illness and chronic pain in particular. For disability at work, I mean, of course, now I'm so happy to see there's inclusively, there's chronically capable, there's there are more platforms coming out for rallying for folks with disabilities who might need some access needs at work. And I think I would also say, not that I don't know, this isn't a direct answer to your question, but I think technology has also made a lot of things more accessible for a lot of folks. And of course, for so many folks, the access has actually been like the removal of a yes or no barrier, where somebody with sight loss now has like more options for like audiobooks and podcasts, or conversely, someone with hearing loss, a lot of videos and a lot of podcasts now have transcripts. But I think, just having those options, again, like curb cut effect, just having those options, it's awesome, because now I remember there was a time, and this was like years ago, when if I wanted some source of entertainment when I was in a lot of pain and I was like lying down in my bed, I actually bought this little iPhone projector, and I hooked it up to this gorilla stand so that it would project onto the ceiling. And I would watch a few episodes of Law and Order, that way. It was it was a totally a thing. But now I'm like, oh, if I'm having a concussion and I'm not able to read as much, now I can listen to the audiobook instead. So I think in that way, technology has just presented us with more options, and especially things like grocery delivery and even food delivery. I know at one point it was unheard of. I think this was even 10 years ago. It was just starting out, I think, and now it's almost like the norm, and it really saves me a lot of spoons if I can just get my groceries delivered and not have to drive to the store and then lift these heavier bags and then drive back. So
Thank you so much. I see you in talking about how grocery delivery and food delivery can be a spoon saving resource for me too, honestly. Damn.
yeah.
Especially as these temperatures get colder and colder, man, my body just quits more easily.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I hear you in that.
All right, Nidhi, how would you yourself benefit from better disability inclusion?
So I was thinking of this question. I was thinking, okay, so there are many kind of aspects to this question. So, and kind of to turn the question around, I was thinking, okay, what are ways in which I'm excluded, or what would better disability inclusion look like for me personally? I think if access needs can be asked for, like as a norm, that would that would be awesome. And not just for me, but just for everyone. Like just how when you attend an event, you have COVID testing, or you need to provide proof of vaccination. I think asking about access should be the norm, and I think I am seeing more of it happening at events, but I think that would be awesome, to where access needs are asked for and not assumed. I think that would be my biggest sort of I think for me, that's what better disability inclusion would look like, is when access needs are asked for and not assumed. And also when when there is reasonable effort and the best of intentions behind providing those access needs. And it's, yeah, and I mean, of course, it's, you know, it's kind of a balance. And actually, I don't want to call it a balance, but it is, yeah, it is in some ways a balance, because, you know, if I were to go to a concert, if I were to go to a rock concert, say, I don't know, Coldplay was playing or something, and you know, I know that there is going to be that kind of those strobe lights and, you know, those effects. So I don't know, maybe just telling folks that, okay, there's going to be the segment with, you know, with these effects, and followed by the segment without these effects, you know, so it doesn't have to be all or nothing is what I'm trying to say. But there can be just a little awareness, maybe, you know, maybe if going to, like, if someone's throwing a party, just saying that, hey, you know, this is, do you have any food allergies? Of course, you know, that's the norm right now. Folks ask about food allergies. So just asking about, hey, is there anything I can do to make your presence here more comfortable? And I'm seeing that happen more and more. And I'm really so grateful to see that.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for sharing this time with me. I really enjoyed finally connecting and getting this off the road.
Yeah, same here, Nico. Thank you.
Nidhi, this is your chance now to promote yourself, talk about any projects you've closed, any achievements you've recently achieved. Where can people find you online? This is your soapbox.
Oh, thank you. So so you can find me on Instagram at ns.jaisoor. That's N for Nancy, S for Sam, dot JAISOOR. And I was going to make a Twitter handle because I'm not on Twitter, but maybe I won't. I'll just wait and see. But yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, and I'm at LinkedIn. My full name is Nidhi Jaisoor, so that's where you can find me. I have been working a little bit on a website of flash fiction that's called onelittlestory.com. It kind of hit a pause, but I am looking to kind of revamp that and start writing again. Yeah, that looking forward to connecting and learning, really, because I know I want to also acknowledge that with this discussion we've had, like, there is a lot of learning that I'm also doing and I'm yet to do. So I just kind of want to acknowledge that, you know, these are my thoughts on accessibility, and it's not, you know, again, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's just the way I'm looking at it. And I also do not want to in any way sort of minimize the experience that others might have with accessibility.
That's a valuable foresight to have. Well, thank you for sharing with us where you are at this point in time. All right, take care.
Thank you for having me. Bye.